So, when we're watching that 90s show, they're 30 years in the past, and we're watching them now. Do you think that there's people 30 years from now watching us?
Well, how would they watch us? Is it government cameras? I mean, the government's got cameras, right?
Do you think people can tell that there's a camera in between us that keeps turning to us as we talk?
Wait, there's a camera?
Hello, Wisconsin! Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to do it.
You said you weren't going to do it.
Oh, I said I wasn't going to do the part that you did when you said it.
I'm leaving all this in, by the way.
Oh, great. Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys, the show that only 90s kids will remember. I'm Matt.
And I'm Mr. Coffee Pants.
That's it. That's his name, Mr. Coffee Pants.
So in a take that I will have deleted, I started coughing while Matt was talking, which normally wouldn't be a problem because I can just isolate my audio, except we are actually in the same room again.
Whoa!
Yeah! So I can't do that. And so Matt called me Mr. Coffee Pants, and as he was doing his intro, I realized that sounds like coffee, like the drink, pants.
It is. That's a new invention. Congratulations, you inventors out there. You can have that for free.
And I swear we're not actually on drugs.
Well, one of us isn't. And I am back from my cruise. Brian, do I look more tan to you?
Sure. You look about as tan as anyone expects you to be.
That's fair. That's a fair point. All right. Well, I know you guys missed us, but it was wonderful, and I had so much fun. But now we're back, and we're talking about a TV show that's been out for just a little bit. Just because it's called That 90s Show doesn't mean it actually happened in the 90s. That's a fun fact for you.
Yeah. You know, about a year and a half ago, we did an episode about reboots and revivals. I feel like there's been enough new ones since then that we could probably do a part 2 of that podcast of even more revivals and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll just start off. My take is I didn't hate it. I think with a lot of these revivals, the cool thing is like, oh man, you actually like that? It's so much worse than the original. And I will admit I like that 70s show better.
Yeah.
But I don't hate it.
This show made me realize we haven't done an episode dedicated just to that 70s show.
No, we haven't.
We did that 90s show before that 70s show.
Which I actually bought, because I'm still clinging on to the past, the DVD set, a DVD set of that 70s show. So I'm going to watch through it. I mean, I know enough about the show, but I haven't seen it in a while, so I'll want to rewatch it again. But that could be coming down the pike sometime.
Yeah. And like, that 70s show, like, when I first started watching that 90s show, it's like, there's a little bit of cheese with these jokes, and that's kind of the idea, is because it's hitting the same feel as that 70s show, and there's a lot of good comedy in that 70s show, but there is definitely a lot of cheese, especially the last season. Like, the last season of that 70s show is just hot garbage, man. Mm-hmm. It was going downhill in the second to last season when Topher Grace was, like, clearly phoning it in and like, I don't want to be here anymore. And then him leaving and followed by Ashton Kutcher was just that. They were the saving grace. It's not like they're like the most phenomenal actors or the best characters on TV, but the whole idea was built around this set of characters, and they all balance each other out really well. Mm-hmm. And so to upset that dynamic by throwing in a character like Randy, who didn't really have a character type apart from be a Donna love interest.
They tried to morph him into like the substitute Eric and the substitute Kelso.
Yeah, and then they put Fez into a bigger role when Fez... He's fine, but he really is one of those small doses type of characters.
Well, the main thing is they didn't need to make a Fez and Jackie love story. That felt out of place. And I like that they retconned it in the original. They didn't retcon it. They say that it happened, but that like Fez isn't still with Jackie.
Yeah, they put Jackie back with Kelso where she belongs. So now with this new show, like, it's already better than the last season of that 70s show, but it's probably not quite where it should be in terms of if you're... And that's the hard part with reboots, is that you want to do familiar, but you also want to do something new. So I feel like they struck a really good balance, and I'll have overall positive things to say about that 90s show, but I think it has room to grow.
You mentioned Randy. I mentioned to Matt earlier, there's one way I would have accepted and liked them bringing Randy into a cameo in this show, is it had to have been an episode where they have other That 70 Show people back, And I would love to see Randy just popping into scenes and everyone having the same response of, who even are you? Like, even Leo, if Leo popped up, was like, who even are you, man? And, like, put a lampshade on the joke that this guy was not necessary. I would have been okay with that. That's the only way they could have brought Randy back and made it okay for me.
Man, there are some good characters this season, but having Leo back, even in the small doses we had him of, like, he is still so funny. Tommy Chong has got it still.
I think Leo, aside from Red and Kitty, obviously, I think Leo and Donna are the ones that appear the most. Oh, and Fez. Leo, Donna, and Fez we see the most. And I love the little, like, they're being aware. She's like, Leia's like, Grandma, how do you know this guy? Oh, he's just a grown man who would hang out with your father and his friends. Huh. Like,
let's talk about, before we get to new characters, let's talk about Kitty and Red, because they are the strength of this show. Not that the new characters are weak. I'm actually impressed with some of these newer characters. But Red and Kitty are the hook for bringing the group back to watch this. And I really like what they did, because they gave a little bit of a change to them, where, like, for instance, with Kitty, I liked Kitty before in that 70s show, before she went through menopause, because after she goes through menopause, her character is a lot more sullen and a lot more, like, grumpy and just, like, drunk all the time. Yeah. And they brought back, like, a happy, optimistic Kitty that she has a little bit of naivety because of that, but it really balances Red's cynicism well to have her be that. So I'm glad she was back.
Yeah, and even with Red, like, I love that they didn't just completely change Red. Red still, is the tough Red that he always was, but he's softened up a bit.
Yep.
Cause then that's what happens when you're grandparents. You soften up a bit, and I love the moment. I mean, this is obviously fan service when Bob is showing him up and being at the birthday party episode, and he's like, "How about this?" And he does the clicker, and all of a sudden, then the garage door opens up, and it's the Vista Cruiser. Which that's one of those things that some shows have these props or things that, like, identify the show, and the Vista Cruiser is definitely that for that 70s show.
I mean, the whole intro was in the Vista Cruiser.
Yeah.
I like that too. And that's another thing I like about Red, is that I think that they maybe were in a rock and a hard place with the writers of, like, well, he's a little bit bully-ish, but we can't have him be a bully. He, like, especially in the culture that we are now, for him to be a character that you like, you have to soften him up. But it does, like you said, it does make sense for an age to soften up, and also when it's your grandkids versus your kids, you're gonna be softer to them too. And so he still had a lot of his don't be a dumb A moments, but he was not, like, unrealistically angry or mean to anyone.
Yeah. So let's go through, like, the cameos of that 70s show characters we see, and then we'll get into the new characters.
Okay.
So I mentioned Bob. Bob, from the very start, I'm like, you know what? Why has there not been announced that Bob's there? Because he has always been the slam dunk, because we knew that it was going to be about Eric and Donna's daughter. So Bob's her grandpa too. And I think it's smart they had him go to Florida and come back. That's such a Bob thing. Too much, more than one episode would have been too much Bob, but I like that they had him.
Yeah, for part of the series, I was like, oh, wait, where's Bob? And I thought of that partway through. I'm like, wait, he would be her grandfather. Yeah. And so, like, we had, and we'll get into this with the new characters, but all these new characters kind of end up being a replacement for old characters.
Yep, I had the same thing. And I have the who I think they all are, because some of them aren't quite as easy one-for-one as some other ones. Yeah. So Bob. I was surprised we had only one episode of Eric. He's only in the premiere. We saw Donna a couple more times.
Yeah.
You think that's just Topher Grace was kind of just wasn't super interested? He came back because of the legacy for once. But that's it.
I know that Topher Grace has more of a time commitment because he's gotten that, Family Economics, I think it's called?
Yeah.
He's got that other show that he's doing, so he might not have been able to be around for too much more than just one.
And I love seeing him quote Yoda, which we never got to see because Yoda wasn't until the 80s.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that 70s show, Eric never knew Yoda.
It's true. But yeah, going back to Bob, like my first part of it was like having the neighbor Sherry. She was like, definitely a Bob.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, why did you bring in this new character instead of having this established character? But she did end up working well.
Yeah. I think it would have been too much if it was Bob. I mean, she wasn't my favorite, but she was definitely like the kooky neighbor who's also parent of other kids in the group.
Yeah.
I mean, she's the Bob. And obviously, knowing Red is a big part of being Bob.
Yes, exactly. And so there's definitely that one-for-one connection. Mm-hmm. So, well... Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about some of those characters, because obviously Leia's going to be Eric with a little bit of Donna thrown in, just a hair, because it's her daughter.
So, do you want me to go through who I think, or do you want to go through who you think?
Yeah, we can both kind of do that as we go along, because like they also, there's some that as we get into it, it's like they're a combination of two.
For sure. Well, I think the easiest one for one is the Asian kid is like the new Fez.
Yeah, Ozzy.
Ozzy is the new Fez. I liked him, and I like that they didn't. They could have just made Fez gay, because Fez was always kind of like a little bit like that. Yeah. But they just made this. They just go ahead and made this character gay, which would kind of fit for like the Fez type without retconning Fez in the original series.
Yeah, and it's he's an oddball type. On the outside of the more popular groups, but there's still like that lovable qualities of him. They give him like these snippy one-liners, and sometimes he's, for being a gay character, sometimes he's the straight man of the group, whereas like the ridiculousness of what's happening around him, he comments on it and has like more of the dry humor sometimes in that.
I'm going to sneak over to Matt's notes and look at the character names, because I don't remember the character names.
I know. It's like, oh, there's that one character, and they deserve more than, the best friend, or...
Okay, Nate and Nikki are kind of the Kelso and Jackie.
Yeah.
Like that couple. However, Nikki is not nearly as annoying as Jackie was.
Correct. Yeah, Nikki's a good... I really think Nikki is a strong character. Nate has some good humor, but yeah, I like Nikki more on that side of it.
Yeah, if we see... I don't know if they're going to do a season 2. I kind of hope they do, because it'd be interesting to see the dynamic, especially since like Nate and Leia almost kissed. Yeah. Which it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, and so like it's funny because like you're watching it, and I like the Nate Kelso dynamic of having those two together, and especially because Kelso is part Kelso, just like how Nate is part Kelso, but then he's also part Donna in terms of that
the love interest. Sure. Yeah, I actually, if I had to do a 1-for-1, I would put Jay Kelso actually as the Donna instead of the Kelso, because like they point out that he's not like his father, like. I love the line when Reddy was... I combined Kid and Kitty. Kitty was like, he is not his father. And then Red was like, Michael Kelso glued himself to our fridge.
Oh, man. And that makes me miss Kelso. Ashton Kutcher played that role really, really well. Yeah. And the stuff that they've given... And like that's why I like the dynamic of Nate and Kelso, is because when you... Like, anyone who's been a teenage boy or has been around teenage boys knows that when it's just teenage boys, their IQ drops, both of them, by like 10 to 15 points. And so some of the stuff that they had where it's just them together, like, they acted really stupid, a lot dumber than their characters are. And their characters aren't, like, smart to begin with, specifically.
Like when that old lady tricked them into going in a hot tub with her.
Or the workout montage. Yeah. Yeah. And then obviously, we have the one that we haven't talked about yet, her best friend, Gwen.
Who is kind of a Donna and also kind of a Hyde.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Because she's the cool one, the edgy one, who lives close by. I mean, Hyde lived in their basement. And obviously, just to breeze past it real quick, we all know why Hyde wasn't there. The character-wise, he was a good character, and it would have been cool to see him if it weren't for everything out in real life.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I like this character, but I was never like a big Hyde fan, and her filling that same role, she's not my favorite character. I like a lot of the other ones better. I'm surprised at how much I like Leia, because I don't tend to like the protagonist in these sort of sitcom shows. Like, I don't like Ted Mosby. I don't know if you can call him the protagonist, but I feel like if we're following anyone's journey, it's Ross and Rachel in Friends, and I don't like them as much as I like any of the other four, et cetera, et cetera. Like, Raymond's great and everybody loves Raymond, but I don't like him as much as any other supporting cast.
Oh, everybody loves Raymond. The show is stolen by the grandparents.
Yeah. Well, are you kidding? Robert is fantastic. Patricia Heaton is really good.
Yes, I would say grandparents, then Robert, then Ray and Deborah.
Yeah. but like, oh man, how different. Okay, sorry. Have we done an Everybody Loves Raymond episode?
No, but we should.
We absolutely should. It is so near and dear to our hearts.
When we're done recording, we're actually going to be doing some brainstorming of episodes of what we're going to do coming up. So now we have some ideas.
Now we've got it. Look at that. See, multitasking.
Yeah. But I think they could do a lot with Gwen, because like with Hyde, what I liked about Hyde is when he got cracked in his armor and he actually like got to like be vulnerable and be nice. Like an episode I'm thinking of is when he was learning how to dance with Kitty. Mm-hmm. That was cool, and I liked that. But we didn't see enough of her really to get those cracks in the armor. There was a little bit when her and Leia fought, but this is another thing. I've talked about this before, is that 10 episodes is really not enough to service this many characters.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And even, too, like, as I was watching it, so the first half of the season I liked less than the second half, and I think I realized why, like, in the middle of this series, when they finally did, like, which one was it? With Brian Austin Green. What was that TV show from the 90s?
Oh, 90210.
90210. So when they did, like, their version of it, I'm like, that's what this show had been missing, because that 70s show would often not lampshade, but it would, like, satire the popular things of that day and put these characters into those TV shows or whatever pop culture references. So I really liked when they did the 90210 thing. I'm like, we need more of this, because that's part of the appeal of that 90s show is the 90s nostalgia.
Yep.
Or the seeing Quick Trip cups for us Minnesotan Wisconsinites.
That, and not only that, but I loved seeing Red and Kitty, and especially Kitty, learn the internet with Windows 95. Like that's gold. Yeah. They brought me back to remember in Gilmore Girls when the grandparents were learning the internet?
Vaguely.
It was like a PSA for the internet at one point, and he's like, so you please click with a mouse and go to this website. I pulled up the Louis Vuitton website. I feel like you might enjoy it. And it's like, who is this for? But I love it. Just like in this show, it was like Windows 95, and like Red's like, why do we need a computer? And it's like, yeah, this is the exact dynamic that people have. Like, 100%. None of my grandparents ever used any computers.
Yeah.
Because if they're all passed away now, but they would be in their 90s or 100s. Yeah. If they were still around now.
And I want to see these kids, I want to see them get into NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, or them all to learn the Macarena, or like all the things that us 90s kids knew and it was dear to our hearts. Like, they had some of this, but I want to see a lot more of that. So I think that would really behoove them to do maybe a little bit longer of a series, because especially they're 30 minutes. And so give us more.
Like that 70s show did a whole 70s musical montage. Give us a 90s montage where they're all singing Vanilla Ice.
Well, I mean, there's much, much better music from the 90s than Vanilla Ice, sir.
But which one would be funnier to see?
Boys to Men.
Okay, you know what? I can see that. Like, the guys need to make up with their girlfriends. They come in singing Boys to Men.
Or All for One. And I swear.
I thought that was Boys to Men.
I think that's All for One.
It's tough because, like, Matt and I were 90s kids. We weren't really in the teenage scene in the 90s.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so there's a lot that blends in, like early 2000s that blend. Like, did you know Malcolm in the Middle is not a 90s show? That debuted in 2000.
Yeah.
And it feels very 90s because it's right at the turn of the century.
If you're asking me, I did know that, obviously.
Well, okay. You're the only person here. But there's other people listening. Maybe they didn't know that. Maybe that was a shock. I don't know. Yeah,
like one of those things that you just kind of like how, late 80s, early 90s, those can kind of blend together.
Yeah.
Like, Full House is thought of as one of the most quintessential 90s shows, but it actually started in 87. Yeah. It had 3 whole years in the 80s before the 90s even started.
Exactly. Kind of like how Back to the Future is an 80s movie, but Back to the Future 3 came out in 1990.
Well, I suppose I never thought about that. But it was still set in 1985.
Yes.
That's the present throughout all of them.
Yep. So there you go. Look, you learned something new. Okay, so yeah, that is kind of the glue to me that was missing, and I wanted to see more of it. I didn't really have too many other complaints. I guess we can talk about some of the arcs too of like we talked about how Leia kissed Nate, but a lot of it was about Leia and Kelso. Mm-hmm. And then apart from that, I don't feel like there was too much other arcs. Because, she had her friendship with Gwen, but Gwen didn't develop a whole lot. It was a lot more about Leia.
There was a little bit of Ozzy coming out to Kitty and his Canadian boyfriend.
Yeah, I felt like I think that was one episode, though. That wasn't so much an arc, that was just like...
Well, the boyfriend came up more than once, but that arc was one episode, yeah. The thing with Leia kissing Nate, I wish they wouldn't have done that because there's no guarantee they're getting a second season. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing, you don't want to bring up a big change like that at the end of a season unless you know you're going to be able to pick it up.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing, like, in that 70s show or any of those older shows when you would get 22 episodes a season, and when they're a couple of seasons in and they're on fire, they know they're going to get another season, that's when you can take those risks. Especially nowadays when they're canceling shows, like, not many shows are getting second seasons, especially Netflix shows. Netflix loves to be one and done.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what's a really interesting dynamic is a character who is a teenage character who's very future oriented and like, these are my goals, this is what I want to achieve in life. And one character partnered with them who's like, I just want to focus on the here and now. And they have that with Nate and Nikki. Mm-hmm. And I find that sort of dynamic to be so interesting because it's not like either one is wrong in their mindset, but because those mindsets can't coexist in a relationship, eventually there's going to be like coming to a head. I think that's how you end season 1 is like that looming over them. Maybe they don't get broken up, but that is clearly something that they have to address and we can get to in season 2. I think that they should have focused a bit more on that, even though they did a little.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think as much as some people might hate the show, like I really hope they do get a second season. And I think we need to see more of these characters, see more of them grow, see Red and Kitty adjusting to the 90s.
Yeah.
Are there any other That 70s Show characters you would love to see pop up in a cameo?
I don't know if there's any more. Like, I want to see a little bit more of Topher Grace, because I like him a lot. I like Topher Grace and Ashton Kutcher. They're my favorites of the series, and maybe it's because they were gone and I felt the lack of them more, and that made me appreciate them more. Maybe that's why I like them the most.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see a little bit more of those guys.
Even random stuff, like they brought Jim Rash back as Fenton.
Was he in? He was in?
Yeah, he was in the 70s Show. They had a rivalry, him and Fez did at some point. He's not a new character.
Really? I did not realize that. I was like, oh, they got Jim Rash for this. That's good.
No, and you think they'd be able to get Luke Wilson for one episode as Casey Kelso?
I forgot it. It's been so long since I've seen that 70s show.
Some of the stuff is just coming back to me, but they name dropped him because Donna said, yeah, we broke up a couple times. At one point I dated Jay's uncle Casey. I'm like, that's a deep cut reference.
Yeah. Did they recast, as the person that they recast as Eric's sister, is she still alive? Because I know the first one died, I thought, right?
I think she is, but I think that my guess is they probably aren't going to bring her back because Lisa Robin Kelly, the first what's her name? Laurie. The first Laurie was so iconic as Laurie that I couldn't see them bringing it back, for such a late stage. I did see there was one slight reference to Laurie, which is when Red said, I only wanted one kid, and then you talked me into Eric.
Yeah.
That's the only time there's even a hint of a reference to Laurie existing.
Well, at least they didn't, retcon. That was in our minds the whole time. We don't have a daughter. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Or, wasn't Bob married early on, and then she left?
I forget the timeline of Bob and Midge, because Bob was with Midge, Donna's mom, who also died in real life.
Oh.
But then for a while, he was with this other lady, Joanne. I think Midge came back, if I remember. I don't remember the details, but there was definitely two different. There was Midge and there was Joanne for Bob, and I don't remember if Midge came back or not. But another one, I mean, if she was around, I bet they would have at least gotten a cameo from Midge.
Yeah. Man, we needed that 70s Show Bible for this episode. Trying to think through all these. But
it was one of those shows that in high school I would always have on while I'm doing homework. It's one of those shows like Friends where it's just on TBS and stuff all the time showing reruns. So I don't know if I've ever sat and watched through it in order from one episode to the next, but I've seen a lot of it.
Yeah, that's how we did it when we watched it. Is watch it in order, and man, it was a slugfest going through that last season and a half, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I don't think that they should bring him back, and I can understand why they didn't. But I liked Hyde's dad, and that was something I was going to bring up earlier. He's the guy who owned the record store.
Oh, Tim Meadows. Is it Tim Meadows?
No.
Tim Reed.
Tim Reed.
From Sister.
Yeah. I thought, and he's a good actor too, but I thought his character is good, and I thought it, like when we were talking about some of the stuff with Hyde, I thought his best stuff was interacting with his dad. Yeah. But it also does make sense for them to not bring him back, because then it's the whole, where's Hyde?
He's a Hyde supporting character, and you don't have Hyde.
Yeah.
Although, may I remind people that back in Cheers, Frasier was a Diane supporting character who not only stayed on the show after she left, but got his own spin-off that went on for 11 years and is coming back for a reboot. So
it's coming back?
Yeah, they're doing another Frasier, and it's Frasier going back to Boston, because I guess the rest of the cast of Frasier isn't coming back, like David Hyde Pierce isn't coming back. Oh. Okay. So I don't know if they're going to have, if there's going to be partially a Cheers thing, if there's going to be cameos there. All I know is that Kelsey Grammer is coming back as Frasier.
Yeah, well, he wants to go where everybody knows his name.
Yep. And just think, so having a supporting character of a character who's not there anymore has had at least one big success.
And you did mention about, like, who knows if this show will get a second season. So there is a second season confirmed for 90s show.
Well, you could have said that earlier. I kept saying if there's a second season.
I thought that it was, but I just wanted to double check. Because, like, there's some, it's like, did I make that up? Or, like, Wednesday. I think there is going to be a second season of Wednesday. Mm-hmm. But, like, then it was in the back of my mind, like, wait, am I wrong? I've been wrong before on this show. It doesn't happen much because I'm so smart and so perfect. But don't look like that. Don't have a face that's like, okay, Matt, whatever you say. Jeez.
All of our listeners have that face. You can only see mine.
They all just, like, in protest, turn off this episode. Like, man, if he's just going to sit there and lie blatantly to our face.
Like, do you even think, I don't think she's going to listen to this, but do you think your own wife wouldn't have that face if she heard you say that?
No, my wife loves me and adores me and supports me in everything that I do, including my lies.
Yeah, of course she loves you and supports you, but I think she also knows when you're not always smart.
No, she has zero examples up her sleeve. She definitely can't think of one at all.
I'm sure.
It's a good thing she doesn't listen.
So I think it was a good choice to bring back Red and Kitty, because they're the ones.
Yes,
it's not going to override be too much like in your face, because even in the original one, they weren't the stars; they were the supporting cast, and they were able to serve that same role and have it be a setting for the same location. I think if you're doing a reboot, having the same similar location helps bring you back into that world.
Yeah, and having each other, like Deborah Jo Rupp and Kurtwood Smith, just took off picked up right where they left off, mm-hmm. and they had that very familiar chemistry with each other, and like that is underrated. Like for them to have the give and take that they had together, it like you felt at home as soon as they pop on screen. You're like, yeah, I'm back in this show again.
Yeah. I saw some videos of those two in real life just talking about the show, and Deborah Jo Rupp was saying like, yeah, like I remember back when we did the pilot or like the table read for that 70s show. I didn't realize it was a period piece at first. Like there wasn't anything about it, and then Gerwin Smith's like, you mean the title? And she's like, well, no, it wasn't called that. It was called like The Kids Are All Right, which I've heard that they changed the title. So I guess like. It took her a little bit to realize this was a set in the 70s.
But no, I'm glad he said something though, because like that would have been my first thought. Oh, that 70s show didn't tip you off? It's not the 1870s, madam.
And there was another one of them having to pick 70s trends versus 90s trends, and of course they picked the 70s trends being their age.
Oh yeah.
At one point it was like bell bottoms versus parachute pants, and Kurtwood Smith's like, yeah, bell bottoms. I don't know what parachute pants are.
Man, they kind of feel like those grandparents like you want,
Yeah.
They're just fun.
So age-wise, they're grandparents in the 90s, so they're older. They're in timeline-wise, they'd be older than our parents.
Yeah, like Red probably served in World War II. Easily could have been.
So they're like our grandparents' age.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit younger because I had old grandparents, but yeah.
Yeah, no, they might have been a little. Well, yeah, they're probably right in line with that.
So my grandparents were born in the 20s and one in the teens.
Yeah, I did some quick math. Yeah, 20s around there. So.
Yeah, so yeah, about our grandparents' age is what it would be. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think what else do we have about? And of course, it wouldn't be that 70s show without like the drug references. So, I mean, it just wouldn't. And like they have the circle stuff, and they found the Candyland bag, and it's like, oh my gosh, your grandma hooked us up. But my thought is, do you really think that those Eric and Hyde and all them would have just forgotten their stash and just left it there?
I don't know. They might have gotten burned a lot by those drugs. No, I like that the first example that we got of the swivel around, like the camera's in the middle of everyone, and it's like swiveling around to show each person as they
when
talk.
They're playing cards?
When they're playing cards upstairs, and Red's like, you're upstairs, people, now. Like, I love that was the first introduction back into that direction mechanic.
Yeah, for sure. And the good thing about it having drugs...
Jeez.
Okay, like one of the big issues with Boy Meets World and Girl Meets World is that like it wasn't totally the same, because Boy Meets World talked about serious issues, even as campy as it was. Girl Meets World was stuck at like the PG family friendly level. It wasn't the same, whereas this one, it was on the same level of like appropriateness and rating level that the original was.
Yeah,
which I think any kind of reboot, no matter where it lands on that spectrum, should be in the same level of rating and appropriateness as the original one.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
keep it feeling. So that's what I meant by it's good that they had drugs.
And I think that's why, that's why there's that whole thing with Hilary Duff and the Lizzie McGuire, and she's like, I want to age it up a little bit. And like, no, we can't do that. Like, I get why Disney would be like, no, we're not going to age up Lizzie McGuire, even though you're at this stage in life.
Mm. Yeah, I know. And I get that. Part of me was just like, it would have been cool to see what all these characters are doing again.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So, 90s show season 2. Let's get a lot more 90s references, because I want to be that Leonardo DiCaprio meme where I'm just pointing at the screen. I'm like, yeah, I know that. I remember those.
Yeah.
There are not enough windbreakers in this show yet.
Mm-hmm.
Not nearly enough.
Nope. And I saw a list. I was like, old commercials from the 90s and 2000s, and maybe I think some from even the 80s, and it was like every one of that list was like nostalgia overload.
Yeah.
And then we talked about commercials, but one of my favorite from back in the day was the guy who with the spiky hair who go, dude, you're getting Adele. Remember that guy?
Yes. You know what I just realized? So I don't know if you know any of his stuff. Do you know who Billy Crudup is?
I've heard the name.
He was like the son in Big Fish. We just talked about last week a show that he's on, the morning show. And then he's in this new show that I started watching, Hello Tomorrow.
Okay.
So he is actually the voice of those old commercials for MasterCard where it's like, doing this, $12. This, $23. Doing this, priceless. Yeah. He was the voice of that. And I just found that out this week. And I'm like, nice. No way!
You know who was in some of those commercials?
Who?
The Muppets.
Of course they were.
Yeah.
I mean, they did a lot of those commercials.
Yeah, they've done a lot of commercials.
Yeah.
Which some people would say selling out, but also doing commercials in the 50s and 60s was what gave Jim Henson the money to keep going and producing and creating things. So we wouldn't have Kermit the Frog and all this stuff today if it weren't for commercials back in the day.
Yeah, let's not poo-poo on advertising or merchandising or whatever. I can get like the bad side of merchandising where people are like, we got 3 Cars movies because of merchandising. Like the Cars merchandise for the first movie way outsold anything else Pixar had ever done by a significant margin. And they're like, we need to keep putting out content.
So, I love Pixar.
But
okay, I saw Cars, the first Cars, in theaters when it came out, and yeah, it was good. And I haven't seen it since.
It was fine. Let's be real.
Okay, I say good because most of the Pixar movies I would say great.
Yes.
So it was it's good. I never saw 2 or 3. At some point, I want to see them just for like the completionist part of me. That's like I want to see every Pixar movie, but I know I'm going to be just like probably playing Heyday on my phone while I just let it happen.
3 was better than it had is credited as. 2 wasn't good. 2 was definitely the low point for that era. But 3 was not bad. I really like some of the themes that they hit on in 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but it's definitely not like Ratatouille, WALL-E, Finding Nemo levels.
Yeah, or even Toy Story. I this is a Pixar podcast apparently.
Apparently,
yeah. I think that 4 had its moments, but I think 4 was unnecessary because I think 3 had such a good emotional ending.
Yeah.
So
and now there's Toy Story 5.
Wait, so is that real?
Yep. They just announced not too long ago they're going to do another Toy Story. They're doing another Inside Out. They are doing another what was it? Oh, Zootopia and another Frozen.
Frozen and Zootopia are not Pixar.
No.
But remember when Incredibles 2 came out? They said, we're not going to do any more sequels for a while. And I guess they're done with that. They're going back to them.
Well, Disney is kind of doing this thing where they keep backing up and reevaluating because their shareholders are not happy. They're not actually doing super great as a company. And they haven't since Bob Chapek took over. But it was a little bit before Chapek took over that they started hitting this wall.
And I wonder how much of this is Tim Allen saying hey, can I just do my career over again?
Look at 2019. Yeah, look at 2019. They had 5 or 6 movies that grossed over $1 billion in 2019, and that since then they have gone downhill. But at the same time, Avengers Endgame was 2019, so their Marvel properties have gone downhill.
Yeah,
they are done with their Star Wars properties, even though none of those hit the $1 billion mark. And then people got tired of all those reboots where it's let's just do Lion King again, except for with CGI instead of animation. So,
except the Little Mermaid's coming out.
Yeah, I doubt that'll hit. If that hits $1 billion, I will eat my hat. Little Mermaid is good, and I like the original. I just don't think it's going to hit $1 billion. Because Aladdin didn't hit $1 billion, and Aladdin is beloved.
So yeah, Aladdin was one of the better reboots because it wasn't a shot-for-shot remake. They actually did different stuff with it. Which Muppet do you think back in the day actually started to eat his hat because he made that comment and then had to eat it, literally start eating his hat?
Oh, I remember this, and I can't remember specifically who it was, so I'll just say Gonzo.
No, it was Sam the Eagle.
That doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like what my memory had. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Okay,
that's not what my memory...
No, it's not a character you would think. Hey, remember when we were talking about that 90s show?
No, that's not. That's ridiculous. We are talking about important things like commercials, Disney's failures, and Muppets.
Yeah.
Those are all important.
So real quick, before we go to trivia, what are some of the best period shows? I think the first big one I can think of is Happy Days. Yeah. Which, and then that 70s show, I think, are the two big ones. I don't think has there really been any. Is the 90s the most recent one that's really been done, or has there been an early 2000s yet?
The Goldbergs is really good.
Oh, that's right. That's in the 80s.
Let me pull that back. The Goldbergs was good before it got super repetitive. Every single episode is Beverly overstepping her bounds, and then the kids resenting her, and then Beverly apologizing, while the kids also realize, oh, you know what? My mom does love me. That's every single show mixed with 80s nostalgia.
I think a lot of shows, if they go long enough, it's kind of like what Harvey Dent said in Batman, you either die a villain or live long enough to see yourself die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain.
Yep.
I think TV shows either die a masterpiece or they live long enough to get repetitive.
Yeah, it's just that they just had the same formula for every single episode, and that got tiresome. I liked Fresh Off the Boat. That was a 90s period piece TV show.
Yeah.
I know this doesn't fit your answer, but Prestige Television, I was just telling you earlier, my wife and I just started watching, and we almost are done with it because it's only 5 episodes. We watched Chernobyl, which is about the actual Chernobyl disaster from 1986. And so, that counts because it's in that time frame. But go watch, guys, if you haven't seen Chernobyl, it's on HBO Max. It is so very good. It's a horror movie without a monster, and the monster instead is radiation. So...
Yeah. I was also going to say, I think another show that maybe went on for a while, but then turned it around with a great finale is Cheers.
Yeah.
So in the Cheers finale is a 2-part finale. They brought Shelley Long back because she had been off the show for like 5 years now. But I love that they toyed with the idea of her and Sam getting back together. It was like, oh, well, they won't they again? But they didn't end up together in the end, which made sense because she wasn't on the show for the last 6 years. And love this line they had. It was back at the bar, and it was like all like the big ones. It was Sam, Woody, Norm, Cliff, Carla, and Frasier. And Norm of all the people made the comment like, "You always come back to your true love, Sam," meaning the bar.
Yeah. And
like everyone knew what he meant without having to spell it out.
Yeah. So when you're talking about period TV shows, that can cover a lot of things. Because, like, that could be... Well, Game of Thrones is fantasy. That's not an actual period in time. But I was thinking, like, Renaissance type
anything that's specifically set in a different time, it is. Because the thing is, if there's no reason for it to be a period piece, if you're not going to play with that, then just why do it? Like, that 70s show did a lot with the 70s motif. And Stranger Things is a period.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. Mad Men would count. That's in the 50s.
Stranger Things, I think, is necessary just for the fact of that show does not work with cell phones. Mm-hmm. And I love the little ham radios they have and, like, parents not knowing where anyone is. Like, today's world would just be simple. Okay, oh, there's a monster. Okay, I'm going to call Mike, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry.
That's all I got.
I'll probably shorten it, but I think I'm going to leave a little bit of that pause in, because sometimes that's funny.
Sometimes. All right. Well, hey, that's all we got about that 90s show. We talked about a lot of other things, too, as you were with us in that. So, hey, if you have TV shows you want us to talk about, if you have ideas for other stuff, or if you're like, hey, I want you guys to talk more about 90s show, or that 70s show to begin with, let us know. Shoot us an email. Jump on our Facebook. Give us a call. Stalk us. Make us get restraining orders against you. You know, just the usual.
But take your shoes off if you're going to jump on our Facebook.
That's true. Like, we just got it cleaned.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's jump into trivia. And last week, our trivia was, we talked about self-destructive anti-heroes or narcissists as the character type. And so 2 that we brought up were Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty and Jeff Winger from Community. And we said, what do those 2 have in common?
They're both left-handed.
I mean, that's probably true, but their connection point is that they are on shows with the showrunner Dan Harmon. He's the same for both.
Yep. Dan Harmon, from all I heard, you know, he's had his own share of controversies, but you can't deny that he is good at what he does, making good TV.
Yeah. Now, I mean, his partner on some of those just got into, like, big controversy. I don't know all that Justin Roiland did, but I know that there's, like, this huge problem with him, and something's going on, like maybe even like criminal wise. So
was he part of Community? Because I recognize that name.
He wasn't part of Community, but he did like a lot. He was more Adult Swim type stuff, including Rick and Morty.
Yeah, he's got a lot of loyal people. Because, for instance, you know, in that season, there's a season of Community that didn't have Dan Harmon, and that season did not have any Starburns because Dino Stama, whatever his name is, he's got a weird name, is very close with Dan Harmon, and obviously his character, even though in the end of season 3 it was confirmed that he was alive even then, you don't see Starburns again until season 5 when Dan Harmon's back.
Oh, there you go. His name is Alex.
Yes.
All right, so trivia for this week. So we talked about that 90s show. We talked about that 70s show. We didn't talk about the little-known spin-off, that 80s show that premiered about 20 years back as a spin-off to that 70s show. And that 80s show starred an actor who, that was one of his earlier works. But now he's actually a pretty big name, and he's been in a number of shows, and he's got like a new movie coming out. So what actor starred in that 80s show?
Was that 80s show set in the same universe as that 70s show?
I never watched it, so I don't know how much, like, I mean, that 70s show is set in our universe.
Yeah.
And I think that 80s show is also set in our universe, so I guess there's that answer.
Well, I mean, like, did, like, Fez ever show up and be like, hey, I'm here, you know?
No, I'm not sure.
Okay.
That's a now thing for sure, to be like, oh, I mean, they did that with that 90s show. It's like, we have to bring all of these characters back.
I feel like that 80s show is kind of like Joey with Friends, like the Joey spinoff of Friends.
Yeah.
Everyone's just pretending it didn't happen.
Yeah. I didn't hate the Joey spinoff, but it definitely wasn't Friends.
Yeah. I watched a few episodes, and then it wasn't until I started listening to a Friends podcast a couple of years ago. I was like, wait, Joey got 2 seasons?
Yep.
Apparently it did.
I think the second season ended with the landlord that he had a crush on making out with some other guy, and then Joey was looking at it and oh no.
Did anyone but Matt LeBlanc from Friends ever appear on Joey?
I don't believe so. I don't remember any of them popping up.
Because, that was probably what would have been the intent. After a while, there's going to be Chandler comes to visit or something. Yep. But they never did that. I feel like if you're doing that, you got to at least have one in the first season.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like they could have gotten one of the 5 of them to come in for a day and be like, hey, Joey, bye.
Yeah. I'm sure that they're like, well, no, we want this to stand on its own. And, we don't want to offend Matt LeBlanc, that he needs them to help carry this or whatever. But
because even in that Friends reunion special they did, they never mentioned this Joey spinoff.
No, why would you? 2 seasons, that's a failure, I think, technically.
Yeah. So. Also, the fact that I didn't finish it is also a failure, because I not famously, but...
No, he's famous for it.
I don't stop watching shows usually. I'm in it through the bad stuff, and then I just keep watching it.
Yeah.
See, Jane the Virgin and Heroes, I didn't finish either of those.
Oh. I didn't watch the Heroes spinoff. They did an epilogue season a few years ago.
I may go back and give Heroes another shot, because Heroes did start out really strong, and I feel like it'd be fun to revisit those earlier episodes.
Yeah, it was killed by the writer's strike, and they never recovered season 2. Yeah. It's half parts of season 2 had promise. It still wasn't quite as good as season 1, but it was season 2 was a short season because of the writer's strike, and they had to wrap things up really fast. And then after that, it wasn't good.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. All right, so that's our trivia. Let us know how you like this episode. Let us know how you like some of our other episodes. If you're like, hey, this is my favorite episode, we want to know that too. But until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.